Hello film fans and welcome to this episode of the Sherlockian. Now, you know Disney have, I say recently, fairly recently been criticised for remaking all their animated films into live action or sort of, different kinds of animation styles which look a bit more like live action. Well, have you noticed that the BBC has started to do that with its documentary series? I mean, first of all there was Planet Earth 2. Then there was Blue Planet 2, and now welcome Frozen Planet 2. Now, I can understand the first two a bit more because it does seem like that was a long time ago. I mean, Blue Planet came out when I was still quite a small child, and I'm now 24, so I can understand why you might want to remake it. But Frozen Planet doesn't actually seem that long ago to me, though I think it is longer than I actually realised. But I must admit, when I saw that the BBC were planning a new series of this, I did kind of think, is that really necessary? I mean, before Frozen Planet, there was actually Life in the Freezer, which actually did very similar things, albeit, in slightly different ways and with less innovative filming techniques. So I thought, is there really anything left to do? So I was actually quite pleasantly surprised when I watched Frozen Planet 2, the first episode, and it's actually really good. Now, I don't know whether I would put it in my top documentaries yet, though, to be fair, I've only just seen the first episode, so perhaps it's a little bit too early to tell yet. But it's pretty good, and one thing I really like is that they aren't just sticking to the Arctic or the Antarctic, which I always thought sort of slightly limited the original Frozen Planet. Fairly decent though it was. They're actually doing just frozen spaces, sort of, basically cold habitats across the entire world, which of course gives you far more scope than would otherwise be if you were limited to just the two continents I already mentioned. Now for me, the best scene in the first episode has got to be, by a country mile, the scene with the orcas in it. Frozen Planet had almost an obsession with orcas. I don't imagine that Frozen Planet 2 will probably have orcas to quite the same extent, particularly as they're not actually looking so in depth at the Antarctic or the Arctic. But this scene was pretty good. It's got basically, if you haven't seen it, and you don't mind it being spoiled for you, it's basically got a pod of orcas in the Antarctic, which are hunting seals by using basically like a bow wave method of hunting. They basically swim really, really fast towards these ice floes with seals on them, then go underneath them, and obviously the resultant bow wave behind them basically goes swooshing over the top of the ice floe, and it brushes the seal off into the water when they can then grab it. But that is a very kind of surface level description because it's amazing, particularly as David Attenborough points out, they have to get basically the tails basically in sync so they get the sort of maximum effect of the wave, and it looks brilliant. It's filmed amazingly. There's a few shots below the surface, most of it's drawn by drones, and then there's some also from like a surface level as well, and it's all synced in brilliantly. My favourite shot is actually the bit where right at the start where one of the orcas basically sky hops. You've probably seen it before, and where they sort of go right up and lift their sort of the heads out of the water when they're looking for quarry, and it does it behind one of the seals. It looks like a scene from Jaws. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's brilliant as well. The way it really kind of shows you the power of the wave they generate. I particularly liked one bit where they're hunting a seal, which is right in the centre of this sort of collection of different ice floes. So it's quite a difficult sort of angle for them to attack at. And it's right in the centre of this quite big ice floe. And you sort of think, there's no way they're going to be able to knock that off. And then they go right underneath it and create kind of like a wave from beneath instead. And basically the ice just shatters. It looks like a scene from like a superhero show. It's amazing, and you think, wow, that's power. It really gives you an amazing sense of the kind of the power and the majesty, if you like, of these really amazing cetaceans. Other than that, I really also enjoyed the scene with the Siberian tiger in it. Siberian tigers, as I understand, are very difficult to film, basically because they have massive territories. There aren't very many of them left anymore, sadly, and as a result, any sort of modern sort of normal filming techniques, which they do say for Bengal tigers in India, really don't work. So that means that they basically have to use trail cam footage, if you like, which is fine, except your average trail cam doesn't really shoot anything more interesting than a tiger walking past, maybe sniffing a tree or something, or possibly the most interesting thing it's going to get is a tiger feeding on a kill, and that's about your lot. It's nothing particularly exciting. What they do is somebody at the BBC for this series must have discovered the fade button in the editing room, because they get these really cool shots where you see say some like pigs rooting around next to like a tree, and then it will slowly fade out, and then you'll see the Siberian and tiger come up and sniff against the tree and check to see how old it is, and then David Attenborough will tell you it was like months past, so it moves on, and it does it again with another with a brown bear rubbing its back against a tree, and then you see this, they actually then have both the tiger and the bear alongside each other, and you sort of think, that surely can't be the same shot, can it? And then it slowly fades the bear out, and you realise actually it was shot again months between the two. It's absolutely amazing, and it climaxes actually with a quite cool scene, very tense, where tiger finds the den of a hibernating, I think it's a sloth bear, and it tries to attack it by sort of sneaking down into the den, and you get these amazing shots, which obviously are filmed again months apart probably, with the sloth bear going down into the cave and then the tiger following it apparently. And I was really expecting this like titanic battle below ground. I was thinking, this is amazing, wow. And then it's a kind of anticlimactic a little bit at the end, although, you know, fair enough really, because they're not in control of the situation. Then you find out actually the bear's in too deep. It's basically snuck in to quite a narrow part of the cave where obviously the tiger can't follow it. So the tiger then just goes out again. But nevertheless, it was quite exciting, and I did genuinely think at one point they were going to have this really titanic battle below ground. I was thinking, wow, and then it kind of really subverted my expectations, but in quite a fun way. I wasn't too disappointed. Then the final scene, and this is it shows that the BBC have not yet lost their ability to sort of create harrowing scenes in their BBC natural history documentaries, which is obviously a good thing, because it's what they're famous for, particularly David Attenborough. But there's this brilliant bit with some musk oxen. They've just had their calves, and I think they're not very old at all, and they're sort of just starting to be able to walk, and they look really, really cute, and then it cuts to some footprints in the snow. And I thought first of all it was going to be wolves, and I thought, oh really? We've sort of seen that loads of times in documentaries of wolves hunting musk oxen. And then I thought, actually, that's quite a big footprint for a wolf, and it's quite square. I bet I know what that is. And it turns out to be a grizzly bear. And there's this amazing footage of this grizzly bear hunting these musk oxen. And if you've ever seen any shots of wolves hunting musk oxen, you'll know that they form like a defensive circle with the calves in the middle, but they don't bother with that with the bear. They just leg it, and literally all the adults run away and leave the calves to fend for themselves. And it's quite a harrowing scene. The bear kills one, and you think, oh, that's over then, and then it just drops it and kills another one, and then it cuts to the bear and feeding, and these baby musk oxen are just wandering around. They're completely lost. They have no idea what they're doing, and one of them just kind of walks up to the bear because it thinks it's his mother, because it's like another big object in the vicinity, and the bear stops what he's doing, kills it, and then goes back to eating the first one again. And it's really, really harrowing. And there's this really sad scene of this baby musk oxen which has escaped and hurt its leg, and it's trying to climb up trying to follow where its mother's run off to, and it's trying to climb up this snowbank, and it just can't do it. It rolls back down and then just gives up and lies down in the snow to die, and it's really sad, and you think, oh. And it can't be much fun for the film crew either when they had to film it, and it does show eventually one of them finding its mother again, so it doesn't have an entirely depressing ending, but nevertheless it was a pretty harrowing scene. It's not quite as harrowing as the grey whale calf scene in Blue Planet, but it's probably up there. And I just loved the way it pretty much subverting my expectation again when the bear killed one calf, and I thought, that'd be it. And then it just kept on doing it. Of course, it makes perfect sense from a survival point of view, but it's not a particularly easy watch, I have to be said. And that leads on quite nicely to the score, which is, it's not as good as some other scores I've heard. It's not as good as, say, Seven Earths, One Planet, but it's pretty nice. I particularly enjoyed it later on when it was showing you footage of glaciers shot from the air, and actually from space as well. That was quite pretty. It's a nice ornamentation to the series, even if as yet I can't say it adds a lot to particular scenes. I wasn't absolutely shocked for that really, really catches the moment of that scene like I did when I watched, say, Seven Earths. But it's pretty nice, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they'll do with it next in some of the next episodes. So there, yeah, that was my review of Frozen Planet 2 and the first episode. It looks to be a really good series, so I'm looking forward to reviewing the next episode when it comes out. Next episode comes out on Sunday, so it's quite nice. It was quite easy to review as well, because you get a week to review rather than, say, like Prehistoric Planet, when I had like a day to do each video. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please think of subscribing to the channel. And my next video on Frozen Planet 2 will be out next week when I look at episode 2. So hopefully that'll be as good, if not better, than this episode. So yeah, that was the Sherlockian. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.